So first up, let's look at our contact center solution and what is included. Like I said earlier, 3CX does offer a multi-channel contact center solution, and that's really so that we can give our customers the flexibility to choose the method of contact that best suits their needs. So agents can communicate that way really effectively and really efficiently with customers across multiple channels. And the great thing is that they still only have that one user-friendly interface. So pretty much everything is done from the 3CX web client. Now we did used to, or we actually still do have a number of our contact center features available on the Windows client as well. But my advice to you would be that for new installs going forward, we are going to build more of the enterprise features into the web client. So do try and push them in that direction if you can. So the core components of our contact solution then, or indeed any of our competitors as well, are the Wallboard, call queues, and call flows, which kind of sit quite nicely together. Agent training, of course, we need to be mindful of how we bring new agents up to speed. And then our live chat feature, which can be embedded into websites or social media to enable customers to contact you kind of on their own terms. And what I'm going to do now is look at each in a little bit more detail, starting with our Wallboard. So what our Wallboard basically does is enables call center supervisors to track their team's performance against any KPIs that might be set and monitor SLAs. So it gets current call stats based on what's happening in real time on the switchboard. So that will update pretty much minute by minute. And when you look at our Wallboard, if you're a member of one queue, you will only see the statistics for that queue. The crucial thing is if you're a member of multiple queues, all those statistics are going to be added together by default. So you will see them as a combination if you're a manager that manages multiple teams. And you'll see in the picture on the left-hand side of the screen, the statistics include the following. So we have the average talk time, which is the total average talking time for all serviced calls. Then we can quickly see the number of answered calls, the number of abandoned calls or unanswered calls, the number of agents that are busy answering calls at any one time, and then the total number of calls combined. So you can see exactly what's coming in and out of your call center. And as well in that top right-hand corner of your Wallboard, your queue managers can leave a nice motivational message to their teams. So you can change the name if you want. So if you want to write 3CX sales team, whatever it might be, and a little quip. So perhaps a lot of contact centers, they run competitions throughout the day based on number of calls taken, number of outbounds made, and so on. So it's a really nice way to kind of engage staff. And in a future service pack that we release, we will be introducing a leaderboard. Now it's been talked about for a little while now, but it is being worked on. And that will then enable you to rank agents alongside each other and just kind of enhance that sense of competition between the team. Now, if you are a queue manager and you have you are monitoring your team on the Wallboard, one thing that I would say is a really useful feature that sometimes gets missed as well is if you go to our Wallboard, by default it just shows within your web client, but there is a button in the top right hand corner that you can actually pop it out as well and just have it sitting there in the corner of your screen. So that's a really good, just quick kind of tidbit to give your clients, because what they can then do is focus on another task or a bigger piece of work, but also constantly be monitoring their agents on the phone to make sure that everything is happening or kind of according to plan and everything is staying on track. And then behind that Wallboard, and really the crux of any contact center, is having an organized and efficient queuing system. So I'm going to explain how queuing works with 3CX now. So if you are slightly newer in the room, and I know when I did my poll at the start, actually we are heavy on people that have been with us under a year today. So a call queue basically places incoming calls in a line to be answered. So while your extension users are busy or your agents are busy with other calls, those callers get placed in a queue, and that's when, if you've called a contact center, you are typically sat listening to the music on hold. So with 3CX, we do obviously have 3CX music on hold by default, so you can opt to use that. or you can customize it and use virtually any track you want. I've seen some really nice integrations actually where people have connected to things like Spotify and had little mixtapes going. That's a really nice feature if you've got the capabilities in-house to do it. And the core kind of difference between a call queue and a ring group, which is worth mentioning as well, is that when you're in a queue, obviously you do sit and wait to have your phone call answered. Whereas if you put your agents in a ring group, our system will then basically poll them once. And then after they've been polled once or they've been called once, if there's no answer, that call is going to get transferred to the destination that you set if it's not answered. So effectively, what will probably happen is that call will be made and it will go to voicemail afterwards, which isn't brilliant if you want to be obviously servicing as many calls as possible, making as many sales as possible, and boosting your revenue. So call queues are essential if you are dealing with contact centers. And with 3CX, agents do have the ability to log themselves in and out of call queues by default, so that's worth mentioning. So a lot of you will be familiar with our web client. In the top right-hand corner, there's just a little queue symbol, and it will glow blue if you are logged into your call queue, but by default, you can click on that, and it goes grey, and that means that you're out of your call queues. Now, if you don't want this to happen, what you can do is set the login, log out to be automated according to their shifts and break times, which is really useful. One, just to engage your agents, keep them on track and keep them on schedule, but two, so that you know exactly how many people you've got staffing their phones at any one time. And then once they are logged into that queue, calls are distributed to the agents as they become available based on the polling strategy that you select. So we do have 13 different polling strategies in 3CX, so I haven't summarized them all, but we are indexed really effectively on Google. So if you do just Google 3CX polling strategies, you'll get the full list with all the descriptions. But some key and kind of common ones that I wanted to just pull out and explain are prioritized hunts. So prioritized hunt will basically always poll the first available agent in the list, and then it will work its way down the list of agents until someone answers the call. Quite straightforward. You can then hunt by threes, which effectively does the same thing, but it will poll the first 3 agents in the list all at once. Then you can move on to a round robin, which is particularly effective if you want to distribute your calls evenly amongst your staff members. So a round robin will basically remember which agent answered the call last. And then on the next call, it will begin polling from the next agent in the list. So that's obviously really good because it prevents any one of your agents from being kind of inundated with calls. And then the final one I wanted to call out was skills-based routing, because this becomes a really nice upsell opportunity if you do introduce skills-based routing to your clients, because it's one of our enterprise features. And what skills-based routing basically does is enables you to set a special skill area for your agents. So if, say, you called 3CX support and you are a German speaker, you might, on our IVR, select that you're a German speaker, and then our system would try and connect you to an agent that spoke German and English first, because obviously they want to try and talk to you in your native language. And then if you're not available, or that agent isn't available, it might just connect you to an agent who speaks English only. So obviously not as ideal for your personal situation, but still someone that you can talk to, and is still better than you having to abandon that call because you've not been answered. And if a caller doesn't want to wait in a queue at all, which is obviously quite common, I'm sure we've all been on the phone or trying to get through to the bank or something, and it's taken us a hell of a long time to hear a person on the phone, then you can enable our callback feature. So basically, if you press 2 by default at any point during a call, you're going to be requesting a callback, and that will then put you into a list that agents can access to be followed up with at a later time. And then alongside call queues, call flows are probably the second most important tool in terms of designing how that contact center system is actually going to flow. And a call flow is basically a map for how your incoming calls are going to be handled. So the right call flows, if you have them in place, will allow your customers to do things like automate any repetitive tasks that they might have. which will save them time and improve customer experience. I was actually writing an article for our blog earlier this week on kind of the impact of IVRs on customer experience. And something that was really interesting that I learned that I didn't know before was that actually 51% of consumers, this is in the US, have completely moved away from a business because they've had a frustrating experience with an IVR. So that's the sole reason for them to choose to go elsewhere, basically. So having your call flows in place and working to meet your customers' needs rather than kind of a business need is really, really important if you are dealing in contact centers. So the 3CX Call Flow Designer is a downloadable application. It's separate to our management console. And basically what that enables you to do is create these custom call flows for your clients. And it doesn't require massive amounts of scripting experience. What I would say is it does take a few hours for you to get to learn to use our call center application properly. So do dedicate some time to this and then you will reap the rewards afterwards. We actually have some partners out there that are making secondary income purely from designing call flows for other partners that haven't spent the time learning to do this. So brilliant for them, but why not try and bring that revenue in-house and have that complementing your license fees? Some example call flows that you can create then are things like callback scheduling. So if you want that to be automatic, you could use our call flow designer to do that. You could implement a voice payment gateway, which basically helps call center agents to take compliant payments over the phone. And if you combine that with our stop and start call recording feature, which I will talk to you about in a little bit more detail later, that will basically enable you to have compliant payments. You'll also be able to validate things like customer ID numbers within a database internally. So you could query someone's account number when they phone up to draw up their details. Or, for example, at 3CX, we might query your partner level to make sure that you are a partner and can reach us on the phone. Oh, and of course, outbound dialing as well. Sorry, I forgot that one, but that's a question we get asked all the time is can 3CX outbound dial? And we can, if you can configure it with our call center call flow application. And effectively what the outbound dialer would then do is plow through a big data sheet of numbers that you input. And it would then randomly call those numbers until someone picks up and then connect that call to an available agent. So very good if you've got kind of outbound contact centers or contact centers that do a lot of cold calling. Now, does anybody remember this episode of Friends? People who have come to my webinars before will probably know by now that I tend to use a lot of examples from Friends. But in this episode, Phoebe basically takes a job at a call center. I think she has to sell printer toner. And pretty much the first question that she asks when she gets on the phone to the customer is, what's toner? So not a fantastic experience for the customer or for her in that situation. And if she'd had some of our training features to hand, that whole situation would have been avoided. So we know that it's really important for call centres to have their agents perfectly versed by the time they actually get on the phones. And that's why we've got built-in listening, whisper, and barge features available in our Pro and Enterprise licenses. And what each of those does, I will just run through now. So listen in basically allows supervisors to listen to agents' calls without detection, or vice versa. So your new agent could listen to the supervisor's calls and get really good examples of best practice, see things like objection handling in real life so that they can then take that as feed it into their own role. Whisper can also be used by supervisors to give prompts to new agents. So similar to listening in, they'll be able to hear the call, but they'll also be able to speak to the recipient that has the extension number without the other caller being able to hear. And then we have barging, which can be used if you hear a conversation going totally downhill and you feel like you need to interrupt and kind of set the record straight. So that basically lets you take over a call. And customers as well, this is a training feature that sometimes gets overlooked, but they might want to take advantage of our stop and start call recording, which is another enterprise feature. So that's another kind of upsell conversation for you to have. But by default, when a 3CX Pro license gives you call recording, anyone, any agent on that system can turn recording on and off. If you don't want that to happen, which some contact centers won't want to happen because particularly with new agents, they'll want to be monitoring what they're saying, then the enterprise stop and start lets a queue manager actually remove that privilege from an agent whilst they're training, or perhaps if there's just another reason that would need to be taken away. So do think about that and how it could be useful in helping you to upsell. And then the final feature that I wanted to talk to you about, and then I will have a quick scan through the questions because I know that there's quite a lot coming in. But the final feature that I wanted to just kind of introduce you to is the live chat feature. So this was introduced for version 16, basically because we know that nowadays consumers are looking for multiple ways to connect to the brands and services that they use. So what they're actually trying to do quite often is connect in ways that mirror their communications in their private lives. So obviously we're all using things like Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp in our private lives. We know that that's a super easy way to connect with our friends. So why can't we connect with a brand in that same way? So that's where 3CX Live Chat comes in, and it's effectively a WordPress plugin that enables visitors to your customers' websites to chat with their agents in real time. So that has a number of benefits, both for the customer and for your clients. Obviously, it's more convenient, it's faster. For your customer, there is no call charges. And for you, there are no call charges either, because the technology is all based on WebRTC. And even if you choose to elevate that chat to a call, which is one of the really unique things about our chat, that call is conducted over WebRTC. So there are no call costs whatsoever. Our live chat feature is included in every single edition of 3CX free of charge, so we didn't charge for it, like many of our competitors who can charge pretty much. I know in the UK this can be £15 per user per month, which is quite a lot when you think about the fees that you're paying on for your existing phone system anyway. So big selling point for 3CX, and is something that we should be talking about. And like I said, what's really unique about our live chat is that you can start chatting and then choose to elevate to a call with the same agent if things get a little bit complicated. So that really helps you clarify details or explain maybe a complicated support issue. And it gives the customer a really seamless journey because they're not having to go back into a call queue when they want to call and then speak to an agent who doesn't have the details. They're speaking to someone who's already gone through that initial conversation with them, and it makes it really fast to pick up and resolve any issues. So now I am going to pause to just have a quick scan through the questions just to see what's going on. I know there are a few questions coming in with sound, so all I'm going to say is that there will be a recording. I'm recording it now. We will pop it on YouTube, and everybody will get an email that comes out just with that link so that you can go back through and work in your own time. There's a question about also updating the wallboard. Yes, that is something that has been talked about, both in terms of making it a little bit more visually kind of friendly and also in adding additional options there. But I would say, obviously, the ideas forum is a really good place to start upvoting. So please do find there is an existing post on there and just upvote it if it is important to you. Philip's asked, are there limits to the skill groups that an agent can belong to? If you're talking about skills-based routing, no, you would designate them yourself. So it would depend on the particular queue as to which order you obviously wanted. But if you've got multiple skill groups or if you've got an agent in multiple queues, they can be in different skill groups for each queue and so on. People that are asking for links to blogs, we've had some very kind friends, actors, and otherwise post the links, so that's fantastic. And then I will keep coming back to the questions every now and then, but for now, just to make sure we keep on time, we're going to move on to 3CX integrations. So most of you will know already that 3CX is open standards. So basically that means you can connect virtually any piece of kit that you like to 3CX and it will work, providing you can support that integration yourself. And the same goes for CRMs and PMS systems, which are both really essential tools for contact centers when they are handling things like sales, bookings, or offering support. So if you connect your CRM, basically what it would do is help your agents have the information about their callers to hand as soon as possible, let you instantly log any transactions and keep that record for you without you having to manually update a separate system, which is obviously very time consuming for agents and quite difficult as well if you're having to constantly navigate between different platforms when you're on the phone. We have 4 different ways of integrating, or 4 different options, which I've listed on the screen. So the first one is obviously to use one of our supported systems, which we would certainly recommend, and connect using a P&P guide or a plug and play guide that we've been able to test in-house with our quality teams. So most of the leading CRMs and PMS systems are listed, but obviously we know it's a market that's actually just rapidly proliferating. So it is very hard to keep on track of all the new CRMs that are popping up, which is why we have our next option, which is to use the 3CX CRM template generator, which we introduced again with version 16. And basically what that does is lets you connect any RESTful API, so a CRM with a RESTful API, to 3CX. And it's a free tool that's available. You do need a pro license, but for you guys as partners, you should have access. And it requires really just basic knowledge of programming to use. So you don't need to have a really extensive kind of team of developers in-house. You can get on with that if you just read the documentation, have that kind of, I'd say, grounding, and then dedicate a few hours to it. We did also, so the 4th option is create your own. If you have developers in-house, you can obviously build your own integration from scratch, and we have many people out there that are doing this already. One thing that I would say is that the APIs are being worked on, and it's a question that we get asked all the time because we moved to IPv6, and that did impact the earlier API versions that we had available. So you'll notice the documentation is not online right now. Don't panic, it is coming back. And now I'm going to talk about the bit that I probably get asked about the most, which is call reporting. And I got asked about this a lot yesterday in the webinar as well. So call reporting, obviously really important for any kind of contact center environment. Your queue managers are going to want to know how long their agents are spending on the phone, how many inbound and outbound calls they're making, and also receiving, and how those queues are performing. So how they're working and how they're impacting customer experience. Now, our inbuilt reports try to answer these questions. There are over 30 to choose from, and then with the filtering options, there are many more combinations. But broadly speaking, they can be split into 2 camps. So first, we have quality of service reports, and they're basically any reports that help queue managers check the experience of customers that dial in. So that's things like callback reporting, SLA breaches, and wait time reports. And I will show you as well some examples of how these reports present both as graphs and tables in a minute. And then the second category that we have are performance reports. So they're basically used to monitor the agents whilst they're at work and identify high achievers, or maybe people that are taking it a little bit too easy and you just need to get that flagged. So performance reports include agent activity, extension reports, talk time, and call distribution. So there is plenty of data that you can get there. And basically what those reports will enable your customers to do is to have really clear conversations with their agents about what they're doing well, what they're doing better, and identify targets that will help them just achieve more in their day-to-day job. So as I said earlier, reports can be extracted as data or many of them also as graphs. So I'm going to show you just a few examples now so you get the feel for how they look. Here on the screen, we've got a user activity graph, which shows answered versus unanswered calls for a single agent in the month of January, I think it is. And you'll see that it's really quick to digest. As a queue manager, you can pinpoint days where the agent overperformed or perhaps where they struggled really easily. So, example, you can see here that kind of midway through the month, the agent was doing really well. The answered call rate shot up and its highest it was all month, leaving very few unanswered. Then the week after, we're seeing a lot more unanswered calls. So as a queue manager, then you can instantly see that and instantly pick up on the difference and perhaps just have a conversation to see if there's anything going on with that agent that is impacting their ability to work. I know there are loads of questions coming in as well. So I will pause at the end of this section. And the one thing I would say is please bear in mind that I'm not a technical colleague, so I will not be answering any technical questions. And I will just tell you to go and contact support who are there to help, but do keep the sales and marketing ones coming. And then the second report that I want to show you, just get ourselves back on track, is an average wait time graph. So you'll see that this one presents as a line graph and it shows you the times callers spend waiting before either an agent answers the call, which is represented in blue at the bottom, or before the recipient hung up, which is obviously what you don't want to be happening, and that's marked in orange. And again, it's really easy here just visually to pick up on any spikes and dips that you might have and identify where agents might be overstretched. So for example, this is showing you a whole year and you can see here that there's an incredible spike that happens kind of in November. So if you're a call center, perhaps you're thinking this is in the lead up to Christmas, unanswered calls going up, there's a higher call volume. Do you need to get extra staff on the books to help you through those periods? So just a really nice way of helping you to plan. And obviously the graphs are brilliant, but when you really want to start getting into the numbers, you do need to have access to the hard data. So here's an example of a data extraction. I think this would have been an XML or something like that for agents in a single queue. And again, really clear, really easy to read, and gives you all the information that you need to check your team's performance against one another. So for example, you can see here things like the total time that they've been logged in for, how many calls they take, total ring time, and talk time. So you can see, for example, here, if you look at talk time, you've got two agents that are doing quite well here. You've got 22, 21, but then you've got a few here really low. So that's when you would start having those conversations and seeing what's going on. So lots of conversations coming on, lots of questions coming in about the recording. This will be recorded, so don't panic. And then there's also questions coming in about the call flow designer and where the training is for it. So call flow designer doesn't have a formal training process, so it's not part of our basic, intermediate, and advanced. You would need to read the documentation and just spend a few hours playing with it. I have done this before, and I'm definitely not a technical colleague, but I've been able to produce basic call flows for my kind of dummy PBX that I use on my own with next to no training. So it really is just about dedicating the hours and reaching out to support if you do need help with particular tasks. I think some of our distributors as well, I might add, do run call flow training. So do contact your regional distributor if that is something that you'd be interested in. And then my fourth and final section to touch on is, as I said at the start, obviously a lot of us are working from home right now. So we're going to touch on how we can help our contact centres cope with the change to remote working. So it's on the rise. Obviously, a lot of us are doing it right now. I have been doing my webinars from my balcony, which is lovely, but only if you have the right kit to do so. And I don't know how many of you are actually aware, but a lot of our competitors and kind of big name contact center providers are actually charging agents extra, or kind of companies extra, to give their agents the ability to work remotely. So there's either an additional per user per month fee, or there's an activation fee. Now, with 3CX, it's obviously very different because you can work remotely free of charge from pretty much day one. So in my mind, there's no real reason to pay more. And all they need is that extension number and password to log into the soft phone. So 3CX Web Client, obviously the way to go. Literally just pop it into your browser, put your password in, and away you go. And they've got access to all the communications tools that they have in the office. So they will be managing everything then from that one simple interface, really quick to set up at home. And that brings benefits because obviously they're not having to faff around logging into VPN. There's very low security risks because you are literally logging into the secure web client and that's it. And that will then do everything for you, be it your live chats, your calls, and if you're a queue manager, reporting on your call stats from the wallboards. They can bring their device with them as well. So they don't need to take any tech home from the office if they don't want to. So what we would recommend for kind of call center agents is obviously to use a supported Sennheiser headset with their web client for optimum home working. And I say that purely because Sennheiser is the only headset manufacturer that is supported and fully kind of qualified by 3CX at the moment. But you could also, if you're a queue manager, just get on your 3CX mobile app and have a look. The recent iOS has just come out in its beta form, and we are now video calling from it if you haven't seen, so that's really exciting. So yeah, get them on a Sennheiser headset or a mobile app. And if queue managers are worried about agents not being as productive at home, remember that those leaderboards and kind of wallboard reports can be generated on their own terms, so you can have them coming in daily, weekly, even down to the hour if you really want to. So you can constantly be monitoring agents throughout the day and have those reports delivered to your email, so it's really easy for you to pick them up.